So I'd like to introduce some of my colleagues from here with us locally who are working on the Forestry project. Those of you here in the Southwest might be familiar with the Forestry project. It's a large landscape scale project. They're going to be speaking on collaboration, workforce challenges, contracting mechanisms, and wood for life. So I will hand it over to, I think Jake is going to take the lead here, but let's give them a round of applause.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me all right? Got me? Okay. I'm just going to do a quick introduction, then I'm going to hand it over to Andy. He's going to start it off. My name is Jake Dahlin. I'm the district timber staff here on the Flagstaff Ranger District, also known as a TMA. And I pretty much oversee the timber program here on the Flag District. This is Elise Sawa. She's a small sales forester, also known as the Wood for Life forester. Spent a lot of hours in the woods trying to get wood ready for distribution. And then Andy Stevenson, district silviculturist, and he's going to talk now.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is a great crowd. I'm really happy to be here. Let me just introduce a little bit about myself. All right. So my name is Andy Stevenson. I graduated from the Forestry program right here at NAU. And after I graduated, I started working for the Coconino National Forest, the timber market right here in Flagstaff. And, you know, I've left a few times, but I've always come back. And so I've been working on this forest for about 25 years. And, you know, I want to make this presentation a little bit interactive. So can I see a show of hands of who is from Arizona here? Do we have any members from Arizona? Okay, great. So some of these projects are going to sound pretty familiar to you. And, you know, and if we touch on something that you have knowledge about, please feel free to speak up and share about the emery oak or about planting trees or about wood for life and the impact that it has in your own community, if it has impacted your community. So, all right. So first of all, I just want to introduce kind of the scope of what's going on in Northern Arizona, so you have a good idea of what we do here, what we have been doing. And then we're going to take you later today. We're going to take you out in the field to show you the stuff on the ground that we've been able to do. Okay, can we go back one slide? Okay, so back in 1996, we had several very large fires that were unprecedented in Flagstaff at the time. One fire was 9,000 acres and one was 15,000 acres. That may not seem like very big now, but back then that was a very big fire. And it really woke up the local forestry community that, oh, fires are getting bigger and bigger. We need to do something. And so we started doing a lot of strategic treatments around Flagstaff. But, you know, as these larger fires, the rodeo sky, the wildfires, you know, when these huge mega fires started popping up, we realized that we needed to scale up our treatments even more. So, the four forests in Northern Arizona, the Kaibab, the Coconino, the Tonto, and the Apache Tigray all got together and said, we need a very large landscape scale restoration project. And so that was the start of a project called the Forest Restoration Initiative. And the idea was to treat the 2.1 million acres of ponderosa pine forests across all four of those forests. So back in about 2010 or 9 or so, they started the NEPA planning for the first part of that project. And that included the Williams Range, all the southern half of the Kaibab and the north half of the Coconino. And they analyzed about 800,000 acres. And eventually we ended up with NEPA that would allow us to burn across that entire landscape and treat about 650,000 acres of ponderosa pine. It was one of the largest NEPA projects that we had ever done. And so my entire district got analyzed and covered for treatment within the ponderosa pine. They did not look at mixed conifer. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about a little bit about what I do as a silviculturist. Then I hand it over to Jake, and he'll talk about the timber program. Anyhow, so the Forest Restoration Initiative has really been driving what we do. So every year we have to update our 5-year plan. We have a plan where we're going to be doing 5 years out because it can take that long to get to prepare a project. Archaeologists have to go out and do surveys. Wildlife biologists have to go out and do surveys. I need to go out and collect field data. timber needs to get out there and look at logging feasibility. And then I will write up a prescription and then we review it. We have to go out and timber market, and then we have to do a lot of things to get ready to either sell something or put it out for contract or pay for work to be done. And then at the end of this presentation, we're going to talk about some of our success stories, and that will be Wood for Life. And then I'll talk about the Emery Oak restoration that we're doing and a planting project that we did with the Hopi. Okay, so this is the map that shows the four forests and the areas of the four forests that were analyzed. So that first phase that I talked about included in the orange, the Kaibab, and the north half of the Coconino National Forest. And they recently completed a second 1.1 million acre analysis area that included the southern half of the Coconino, the Tonto, and the Apache sitgraves. Initially, this was viewed as a Ponderosa pine landscape restoration, but when we didn't analyze the mixed conifer in the first phase, what we found out was we were having trouble getting a lot of prescribed burning done because there are small pockets of mixed conifer scattered throughout the forest. And since we hadn't analyzed it, the fire guys were having trouble because they would have to line all of the mixed conifer avoided. So in the second phase, they realized, oh, there's a lot more mixed conifer on those other areas. So they decided to analyze mixed conifer and ponderosa pine to really look at capture the entire landscape and be able to do effective restoration treatments across the entire landscape, not just in the ponderosa pine. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I think I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but so the idea with Forefly was to do very large scale NEPA. So in order to do that, we created a special team because the ability to do an analysis this large was beyond the capacity of the local district. So they formed a brand new team, brought in brand new employees that have a lot of experience, but formed this new team with new positions, and they did these large scale analysis. One of the big focuses was collaborating with partners, because when you do something that big, there's a lot of vested interest from all of our partners and how this process works out. And so, yes, we did have to give up some of our desired goals. Maybe in some areas we weren't able to open it up as much as we would have liked. Maybe in other areas we couldn't do other things, or maybe certain partners had goals that they wanted, like they wanted to see certain roads closed or springs restored. So we included those in the NEPA. So the other reason why we wanted to go to such a large scale is that in this area of the state, we did not have a very good wood product industry. And I think wood product industry were reluctant to come back into this area because we couldn't guarantee a reliable supply of wood. They had to rely on individual districts to get their NEPA done, get timber marked, sell the timber. And industry would have a hard time, getting a loan from the bank or getting someone to invest in them in order to set up a mill. So with this large scale NEPA, we wanted to demonstrate, yes, we have a guaranteed supply of wood. We have there are very few barriers to us being able to put out these timber sales. And so it was kind of hit and miss. It took about 10 years, but we're finally getting some industry coming in here. And I think Jake can even talk a little bit more about that later. Okay, so as you can see, here's an example of the restoration work we've done. And then, with adaptive management, the idea is we would take lessons we learned from the first analysis and apply it to the second. And here's an example of that. So in the first analysis, they assigned treatments to every stand out there. They said, you're going to do this treatment to this stand and this treatment to this stand. The problem is, it is very difficult to get out and look at 1 million acres and field check and verify that the treatments that you're assigning to these different stands are, in fact, the most appropriate treatment. So as a silviculturist, after the NEPA was completed, I was going out and finding out, oh, some of these proposed treatments don't really match what we need to do on the landscape. And I felt like I was a little bit hamstrung by that site-specific NEPA. And so, we went back to the NEPA team and the line officers and the decision makers. We were able to find some workarounds. But when they did the second NEPA in the rest of the area, they, instead of doing site-based treatment prescription assignments, they created a condition-based treatment design. So they would say, if you see this condition out on the landscape, you can do X, Y, or Z. Or if you see this other type of condition out there, you can do A, B, or C. Kind of like a dichotomous key of you have these conditions, these suite of treatments are available to you, or if you have this type of forest, you can do these types of treatments. And so it provides a lot more flexibility to the local land manager to choose the appropriate type of treatment based on what they see on the ground. And so this is a really great way to do adaptive management and learn from what you're doing. And that's a really key point, is to describe what restoration and what you want to see on the landscape based on the conditions that are out there. And so I'm really glad to see that in that second NEPA that they really took a new approach, condition-based treatment. Okay, next one. All right, so let me talk a little bit about silviculture. So my job in particular, so I'm considered a resource specialist. My job is to help analyze and manage the vegetation out there on the landscape. So part of my job has been involved with NEPA analysis. And so for those of you who don't know, NEPA stands for the National Environmental Policy Act. And that's the requirement from Congress that we must analyze all actions that we do as the federal agency. And so we must describe what it is that we're going to do and what the effects are. So I have to go out and collect scan data, describe the current conditions. We then, as a team, get together with the other specialists in the line office. We decide if there is a need for change. What is the desired condition? You know, what is the need? So you describe the current conditions, describe the desired condition, and then the proposed action describe how you're going to get from the current to the desired condition, and that's what drives treatments. And so from that, I then develop a prescription. This is a prescription that helps to inform the marking crew or the logger that's doing the treatment, what trees they can cut or what shrubs they need to remove or whatever is going on out there. Another big part of my job is reforestation. So anytime we have a large wildfire and if it's a high severity fire, particularly the ponderosa pine does not have a very good ability to regenerate after a high severity wildfire. So we often need to go in and plant in order to get the forest to come back. Another big part of my job is forest health. So if there's any forest health issues that are going on out there, the silviculture gets involved. We often tap into, we have a forest health team here in Arizona. There's another one in Arizona. And there's these forest health teams all throughout the Forest Service. And I'm sure the BIA and BLM have entomologists and other pathologists that specialize in this kind of work. So I will get with them. And so I'll give you an example of a forest health issue that we're dealing with. So we have something called the oyster shell scale, which is affecting our aspen stands. And so this is like it's like an aphid almost, but they just sit on the bark and they put a proboscis in, they suck out the sap out of the tree. And over time, it will kill the aspen. And so we're trying to figure out what we can do to deal with that. So we're working with the local entomologist to see if there's a spray that we can do. Can we just wipe them off? Can we scrub them off the trees? That kind of thing. So that's one example of a forest health project we're working on. Another thing that we do is timber stand improvement. And that's basically a catch-all term for all non-commercial treatments of vegetation. So a lot of times after we do a large thinning project, there might be a lot of latent, seed sources in the soil that because we haven't done a prescribed fire yet. So we might get a lot more regeneration than we expected in there. We might need to go in after the fact and thin out the abundant regeneration that we don't necessarily want before we can get prescribed fire in there. Or if there's just certain areas where because it's too dense, the trees haven't been able to grow big enough, we might go in and do a hand thinning project or even a mechanical thinning project just to remove that non-commercial work, reduce the fuel, to improve growing conditions. So there's a lot of little different aspects of the silviculture program that we work on. So that's a lot of what we do in silviculture. And do we want to say this for later? Do you want me to talk about this now? Okay, sounds good. All right, so for those of you that said that you're from Arizona, do we have any Apache in the room? Okay, good. I want you guys to speak up if I don't characterize everybody else correctly, okay? So, a few years ago, the Forest Service was meeting with a group of Apache elders. And one of the elders, his name is Vincent Randall, he's a Yavapai Apache. He was saying that a lot of the emery oak groves that he used to collect from when he was a little boy have either stopped producing or they've become dense and overgrown and they're more difficult to collect from now. Maybe they don't produce as many acorns. And he also said that he was noticing that they weren't getting as many new young emery oak trees regenerating within their traditional oak groves that they collect from. So as it comes about, because of the Resolution Copper Mine that is going to be built on Forest Service land, is going to affect one of the traditional cultural oak groves that the Apaches collect from. The mine provided some funding to say, here's some funding that we can use to restore oak groves on other National Forest Service lands, other groves that the Apaches collect from. And for those of you who don't know, emery oak is an acorn that is not terribly bitter, is my understanding, and the Apaches collect it, and they will, use it as part of their food source. They grind it up into like a little powder, and they sprinkle it on their food, or they put it in soups. Do any of you have other ways that you consume the acorns? Are there other ways that the tribal members use it?
I don't want to speak, but
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so one of the meetings that we had with the elders, they made a soup out of it, and it was in the soup. It tasted interesting to me because I didn't grow up tasting it, so it was nice, but I probably wouldn't normally eat it. But I think it's definitely a cultural flavor that you get used to as you grow up. So thank you for sharing that. So anyway, so with the emery oak, the acorn is not viable for very long. It's only viable for about 30 days. So the way that you'd have to be there to collect when the acorns fall or is ripe on the tree, and then you directly seed it into the ground. And so we are starting a project where we're taking acorns, directly seeding them into the ground. We're also removing competing vegetation around the grove, but we're also doing it with information from the tribal elders, because there are other species that grow in the grove that they want to see stay there. So, as forest, I thought, oh, let's just remove all the competing vegetation. We'll cut out the junipers and the pinyon and the hackberries and all that stuff. And they're like, no, you need to leave some pinyon. That's important too. You got to leave some hackberries. That's important too. So, it's a lot of, cutting out a lot of junipers and mesquite trees out of these groves to try to reduce competitive pressure to the existing emery oak trees, and then also open up spaces to regenerate the new trees. And so, so this has been a really great project. I really enjoyed working on that. And so there are traditional growth on the Tonto National Forest, and there's some traditional growth on the Coconino National Forest that we're working on. And I know that they're also starting this project on some of the Apache lands as well. So that's one project that we've been working on. Yeah, so I got ahead of myself, and so this slide just kind of outlines all the stuff that we've been working on. So we had another project working with the Hopi, and a few years ago, right before the pandemic started, the cultural preservation officer for the Hopi came and visited the Flagstaff Ranger District to talk about the Hopi worldview and why the Kachina Peaks are important to them. And so I was there at that presentation, and then after the presentation, I was just chatting with them. And I said, well, is there anything that we could be doing on the forest to, ensure that, the Hopis have what they need from the forest? And he mentioned that, that they would like to make sure that there is a sustainable supply of Douglas fir trees, because Hopis, they utilize the Douglas fir boughs, which is the ends of the branches for some of their ceremonies. And so we got talking about that, and I said, there is an area where I could plant some Douglas fir trees. And so there was a fire about 40 years ago on top of Mount Elgin, which is the mountain that's right outside here. You can see it's not the big peaks, but it's the mountain to the south. It's called Mount Elder. And so we got some grant funding and we grew about 2,000 Douglas fir trees. And I hired a local nonprofit to partner with the Hopi tribe. And we had a volunteer event where we had Hopis come out and we planted probably about 1,000 trees that day. And then we also hired a Hopi crew to finish the rest of the planting and put them all on the ground. And so this was a great project, very successful. It was a lot of fun. And it was just really nice to be able to collaborate with someone who really is going to be invested in these trees. And I hope in the future, 50 or 60 years from now, Hopi members will be able to come up and utilize boughs from these Douglas fir trees. So, ready. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to Jake.
Thanks, Andy. Alrighty, so I want to start off by saying the reason why I wanted to come here today was because when I got involved in the Forest Service many years ago, I had no idea what it was, like what it was all involved. And so can I get a show of hands of folks in here who've either worked for the Forest Service or worked closely with the Forest Service? Okay, so maybe like a little over a third. Yeah, so I got hired in the Forest Service as a seasonal worker just out of the Marine Corps in Utah. The guy called me out of the blue and he's like, "Hey, do you want to come cruise timber on the Wasatch Cache?" And I was like, "I have no idea what you're talking about, but sure." He's like, "Send you out, we'll send you to cruiser school, and you go out and mark trees, measure trees, do heights, do defect, do all this stuff, but you'll be in the woods 40 hours a day." All right, yeah, I'll do that. I get there, don't really know what's going on. I figure out how to cruise trees, go through my daily life, but still I don't have that understanding of what the Forest Service is about, what these end goals are about. Next year, I went and did a different seasonal job marking timber down in Colorado. But I show up to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, get in the van, go out to the woods, go out there for 10 hours. And we come back. And I still was seeking that larger understanding of what the Forest Service was about, what these goals were about, why we're managing the way we're managing, why I'm painting the trees that I'm painting. So went to college, went to Colorado State, continued to work through the summers, different seasonal positions throughout the West. I'm originally from upstate New York, and so I always had a dream to be in the Rockies and be hundreds of miles away from people. Again, that's kind of the reason why I came here today, was I wanted to give like a 101 of the Forest Service and a 101 of the timber program, because there's like several different aspects to it. And yeah, so for those of you that know what's going on here, sorry to bore you. I'll try to be quick and fast and give you the basics to the timber program. So Andy, if we think of like resource management or land management as a circle, we start with the science, the NEPA analysis, all that stuff. Like Andy started at the top of the circle and moved to maybe the quarter. And so the timber program, we get it at that quarter, and we're now going to be working on implementation. So we get, well, let me knock it ahead of myself. So the first thing that we identify every year, or gets identified for us, is what's called target. So the regional office tells us, "Hey, we need you guys to do 12,000 acres of timber sales this year." Or sometimes it's in CCF. It all depends on where you're at in the country. Every region, every forest is a little bit different. But that's really like what drives my mind and drives our crews every single day. Is we've got this target to meet at the end of the year. We're expected to put out a certain amount each quarter. And so that's how the planning goes. And so here on the Flagstaff district, or on the Coconino, with regards to Forestry, we are not necessarily focused on valuable timber. It's not really valuable here, like it is, say, up in Region 1 or Region 5 in Montana and Idaho and the Pacific Northwest. We are focused on like that, creating that resiliency, putting that forest back to those the pre-colonial times, and getting the wood off so that the old growth and the big stuff can survive. So we have 3 different types of target here. We have what's called high priority partnership projects, which is partnerships are a huge thing here. And that just really means working with National Forest Foundation, working with the city of Flagstaff, working with Coconino County. And so with that, for example, this year we put in for a grant with the Department of Defense called REPI. It's the Resource and Environmental Protection Initiative. And I'm not even going to try to say the other acronym that it's protecting, but so we got about $1 million from that. And when everybody pulled their money together, we got about $12 million total to do 5,300 acres south of town. So that's one kind of piece of the puzzle in the timber shop. Then we have this innovations project where we're working with the Nature Conservancy. And it's like a database project where we're trying to figure out how long it takes from the time we start laying out timber sales to marking it, to selling it, to cutting it, and to the mill, to try to figure out what the most effective tactics are. And I'll explain a couple of those here in a little bit. But so we've got 400 acres of that going on this year. Then you have your basic district timber sales program and service contract program. And so we're looking at about just under 8,000 acres here. So we've got roughly around 13,000 acres of like projects that we plan to either sell this year or execute. So that's a pretty big number compared to throughout the rest of the country. And traditionally, it wasn't like that here. Again, with this push for fire and push for like changing the structure of the forest, we really had to up our game. So another thing that I want to talk about were all of these words and names and values that they associate with wood. So you have CCF, you've got million board feet, you got regular board feet, you've got tons. And then you'll go to different places in the country and they'll assign a value to it differently. But the easiest way that I like to say it is you look at one loaded log truck here on the Coke, that's 7 CCF, or it's about 4,000 board feet, or it's about 25 tons, or it's about 10 to 12 cords. So when you see that, that's what we're looking at. So, and then here they say about 3 cords will heat a home for a wintertime. So a log truck can roughly heat 4 homes in a wintertime. All right, so you guys got all that? Cool. So now we have like kind of the structure of my shop, our shop. So I work for the Ranger, and I have right now, I think 14 full-time employees, and I have 12 seasonal employees. And then there's 4 different shops within the program. But this is what the organization of the timber shop looks like. Again, this is kind of sarcasm that I did this because the Forest Service, it's just one of these things that if you ever work with them, you'll see it. Like, what does this mean? But I figured I'd just show it to you so you say you've seen an organization chart. All right, so now like this is where I started. This is where like all the fun is being had. This is where you should try to stay as long as you possibly can. So I got my first job. I'm technically a marking crew. And so you go out, you get the prescriptions from the silviculturist. They'll give you what's called a cut card. And they'll show you what you're supposed to paint, what you're not supposed to paint, how you're going to do the boundaries. They're going to give you all these details. And you walk anywhere from 12 to 14 miles a day, carrying an insane amount of paint with you in the middle of the woods, painting trees. It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. You usually end up covered in paint, which is a total drag, but it is what it is. You're away from everybody else. But so the marking crew is kind of where you get your career started. Once you move up to Once you move up to sale layout, now this truly is the gem. This is where I would say for the rest of my life, if I could. So your job is to take the units that the silviculturists lay out. And you can kind of see some stuff on here. This is why I brought this out. You can kind of see these different colors, these different numbers. These are all different units. So he's going to give you this map. And then I'm going to tell you, go out and find all the problems with the ground in here. We need to figure out what type of machines we're going to use. Is it going to be rubber tractor, rubber tired skidders? Is it going to be excavators? What's it going to be? And you walk around. And I spend a lot of time looking for sheds. I never would tell my boss that. You're looking for fences. You're looking for heritage sites. You're looking for caves. You're looking for places where the equipment can't go. I mean, it truly is. You're usually by yourself. It's peaceful. It's quiet. Trees are talking to you. I don't know. I dig it, but there's a lot of responsibility that go with it. And so I think this is where you spend a lot of your time as a forester and like a steward of the land, truly understanding what's going on out there. So if you ever see a layout job, go for it. That's where you want to be. All right. So now we're about halfway on that circle. So it's contract prep. And so these are foresters. And so kind of the difference between marking crew and layout, they're considered forestry technicians. And all that means is that they're not required to have a college degree to have those positions. When you get into contract preparation, you're required to be a forester. And so you have to have a SAF accredited college degree to be able to pick up that 460 series. It's just a little thing that identifies you. But so contract prep is kind of like, you've already done all your marking in your history. You've already done your layout in your history. Now you know how to put all that stuff in a contract and get ready to go out to sell. So this is, I'm not going to say it's a boring job because then none of you would go after it, but you do spend a lot of time sitting at a desk in front of a computer. So if you like doing that, there's that. You do a lot of GIS, which a lot of people like. Sorry, I've never been a pre-sale forester, so but it is, it's critical. That's where you're literally taking all the information that the marketing crew and the layout crew compiled from their time on the ground. They're going to give that to you, and then you build it into a contract. And then we got to try to sell that contract either to a logger, or in a case where it's not a true timber sale, and we'll get into that in a few minutes, but you'll build these service contracts. And so we focus the service work on different types of service loggers. So it's a lot of information, but it's cool. So that's enough of contract prep. And then go back. And then now you have implementation. So the contract gets sold, right? It goes out to a logger, it goes out to a service logger. And then we have our sale administrators and our harvest inspectors. And they do exactly like it sounds. They administer the sale, they inspect the sale. And so their job is work with the loggers, you know, before, during, and after the logger. They're doing everything to make sure that they're maintaining compliance with the contract. Yeah, and then so that's kind of like bringing in that full circle, You know, we get to the end, then we start into the monitoring world where we're watching what's going on. But that circle never ends. The processes keep going. You know, fire will come out of the landscape, and we'll keep working through this progress. Okay, well, that's my shop. Those are the folks in our shop. I thought I had another slide. Click one more. No. Okay, so that contract prep that I was talking about, you have like these basic, you have your basic timber sales, and that means that the value of the timber allows it so we can just sell it to the logger. They don't have to put a lot of work into the ground. They don't have to build a lot of roads. They don't have to put in gates. It's straightforward. You just sell it. They go out, they get the timber, and you move along. And what you have, like in a contract like this, it's these two mountains that Andy was talking about. So it's Dry Lake Hills and Mount Eldon. It is all very steep terrain. There's pockets of ground-based stuff in here, but it's not straightforward. And so you're going to have to use a variety of different logging sides. You're going to have to use rubber-tired skidders. You have to use shovel loggers. You're going to have to use helicopter logging. And so this is the Flagstaff Watershed Protection Project. And we'll talk about this when we get up on the mountain, so I won't go too far in depth. But this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that had happened in Flagstaff. The city basically gave us $10 million to protect their mountain against wildfire and flooding. And so we had to go out, do all that recon, figure out what's on the ground, figure out how we're going to get the wood off, figure out where the wood's going to go. But that's kind of the complications between the contracts and the service work. And again, we'll cover some of that stuff up there. We'll talk about shared stewardship and all this other stuff, but so I don't have to talk anymore. That's what I got. Any questions? Cool. Elise Sawa.
Yeah, I should have taken Jacob's advice and stay in the field a little bit more. But if you see a small sales forester position, go for it immediately. So this is the project I've been getting to work on since I've come here on the Coconino. I've worked in Idaho, California, Montana, Utah, all these places. And this is the place where I've gotten to work in the coolest spots. So Wood for Life is a partnership through the Forest Service. It's not just the Forest Service. We're working with multiple partners. NFF is our biggest one. And then also obviously Hopi and Navajo tribes. Basically, our partnership is for one goal, and that's to get wood to people in need. So we like to provide resources and sustainable sources of firewood, and then as well reducing the forest-wide fuels. Like Jake and Andy both have said, is that We don't really have great timber that, we're selling for a large price. So we're also helping the health of the forest by thinning the smaller diameter trees that we can't sell and to give it to people in need. And then also strengthening our partnerships. Like I said, it's not just the Forest Service, it's non-for-profits and tribes that strengthen the partnership every day. So the purpose and need of Wood for Life. The purpose and need basically happened in 2019 when the generating station on Navajo shut down, and then also in Kayenta. And all of these generating stations basically heated all the homes on the reservations. So we kind of were at a loss, and they came to us and said, you know what, we've gotten firewood before, where can we go from here? So obviously coal is a little bit more effective, but while a truckload of coal might last one family a month, a truckload of firewood only lasts about 1 to 2 weeks. So there's a huge demand. And then also we're helping forests get thin through ancestral tribal lands, and we also have abundant fuel wood. However, it is we do have a challenge of getting out to the Coconino National Forest. The problem is that the drive is about half a day, as well as loading the wood, getting it all together, fuel, chainsaws. So it is kind of a pain to come out here and grab wood compared to coal, but this is our second option. And then also we're getting this wood from all the forest restoration projects, such as Andy and Jake have been talking about. And then also, though we have a lack of market, like I talked about for the small diameter trees, we get biomass thinned, and though they have no market value, we are getting them to a great place and a great home to be used sustainably. Like I said, it's a partnership. These are all the partners that we've been working with. Obviously the Coconino and the Kaibab National Forest, but we have Navajo, Hopi, as well as NAU is one of our partners. And then also the City of Flagstaff, Gore, church groups from on. It's a full project with everyone helping out. It's not just one person. So let's talk about wood supply. Where do we get the wood? Like I talked about, we get the wood from the projects on the Forest Service, on the Coconino and Kaibab. This comes through silviculture thinnings and as well as timber sales. And then also some other projects such as hazard tree abatement hazards off of I-17 or 89. So that's where we get a lot of our wood. And then again, here is just a little more in-depth of our partners. We have Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps, which are Hopi based. They're a youth crew that is basically getting on the job training for conservation and showing the younger people's more cultural on their lands and things like that, and giving them more career opportunities and also some education after this. So here's our crews out on the field in Dairy Springs and some of our projects. Like I said, they're youth crews 18 to 24. And what they have been doing on our last two projects is processing firewood. They cut it all up, they bucket, and then they get it all ready. And then they're also they're the pipeline for us to get to the people. They're the ones that put out flyers and talk to people on both Hopi and Navajo, and we can get individuals or tribal communities wood. And then this is Coho for Hopi, which Andy has talked about before. They are an amazing non-for-profit that was established in 2020 when Matt Honani was not a fan of the Forest Service, when we had to turn him away for waiting for about 5 hours for some wood about the first winter that they had without the generating station. They got nonprofit status in 2020, and they are specifically providing heat sources for Hopi people and as well as their traditional houses and kipas. Their mission is to give back to the forest that provides for us. They're not just taking wood for life, they're also helping with planting and things like that. So an amazing organization that just keeps grabbing wood and just giving it to the people in need. And then our next partners are Chiz for Che, which is firewood for Grandpa in Navajo. This is also another non-for-profit that picks up firewood, stacks it, delivers it to elders. They started about in 2019, but have been working with wood for about 10 years before that. Lauren Anthony is their founder, just an amazing guy who's just sees the need for firewood and just keeps finding the donations, and basically started this project from the ground up for himself. And he's been a major player in voicing concerns for the Navajo people and finding solutions to that. And then, so this is how it's structured in the Forest Service. So we can't just give away the wood. There has to be a structure on what we're doing. So we're basically structured it through a master stewardship agreement, which is a SPA. And we had to partner with someone. NFF is a huge partner for us, and what is not like a bottleneck for the Forest Service, because we can't partner with so many people. So they've been amazing. That helps them sign into a contract. They buy the wood, and then they get to hire the people who get to do the on the ground work. The Wood for Life project also goes through NFF's matching of our funding as well. So when we get funding, they get funding. So they've been amazing to help for the Wood for Life partnership, and then to create sustainable movement of this wood. And then also the Forest Service, we're not just doing Wood for Life. For that, we're also doing tribal permits, tribal ceremonial permits, and fuel woods. So this fun text is basically our authority on how we can gift wood to tribal members. This is what we do. We send it through firewood permits. I know a lot of people have probably bought a firewood tag at, the Flagstaff Ranger District or something like that, but here we are gifting them because it is so far away. So we do gift them, and this is the provision that we're granted to give that. And then also we are allowed to give away wood for ceremonial purposes for kivas and hogans. Sorry, go back. So we have areas that people can cut full logs to make different type of ceremonial uses, and as well as gift firewood to heat those as well. And then also we just gift fuel wood that are from past projects, such as logging slash or thinning projects where people need it to heat kivas, hogans, things like that. And then also just heat themselves too. We're always just trying to be multifaceted and get rid of this wood that we need to get off the forest for fuel loading. So again, same provisions that, kind of let us give away this wood. So these are our past Wood for Life projects. This is the first pilot project. It's the Cameron pilot project. Basically, we had 18 cords and they were delivered to the Cameron chapter, which is obviously delivery is a lot easier. And then that's where the National Forest Foundation came in, delivered the wood, got a local contractor, Joe Dirt. He's amazing. And then worked with tribal members to then distribute that wood. So that was the first one in 2020, just a couple months after the generating station shut down. And then we have a next project here. This was about 100 cords cut in a meadow restoration. And they were able to collect wood. And then it kind of sparked, how can we work with more people? How can we work with more youth crews? So that's how we got to work with Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps and start organizing more crews to get more wood out to the people. And then this is also another fuel wood, Elk Park. These were slash piles over an area that couldn't be worked on because of the archaeological standpoint. So they just came in and just hand grabbed about, I think, 6-foot logs that were dry for 2 years and just loaded that up and used that. So it's just so many different things that we can grab and get people out there. And then this was one of our last projects last year. It's our first project on the Wood for Life SPA, that contract that we partnered with NFF. We actually had people come and pick it up. 424 cords were individually removed by the Hopi community. That means we put out flyers and people came out and came to grab that log. those logs. That was 88 acres. And like I said, it was the first contracted project. And also this was processed into firewood from a meadow restoration, trying to get it back to the pre-settlement days. So there were pretty big logs, as you can see, and people coming with multiple trailers to come and grab that. And then our current operations right now is it's called Dairy Springs. It's down Dairy Springs Campground. Right now it's 203 acres and we've got about 80% of the project done. But we've had multiple cords come picked up through both Hopi and Navajo, through chapters and tribes, and also tribal churches and just individual community members. We've had over 1,000 hours of youth on chainsaw, practicing their chainsaw skills, and then also just 500 hours of people just coming to volunteer, help loading this wood up and just making it more of a partner project. And then this is another, pass this off to you because I have no idea.
All right, we're almost done. So yeah, the bipartisan infrastructure law or the infrastructure bill came out a year or so ago. And in there was a ton of different provisions that had tons of money available. I was working up in the San Juan Forest at the time, and we were putting together our Wood for Life program. And knowing this program down here and building that program up there, we realized that one of these like major pinch points is there's not a lot of industry available to do this work. You know, there's work that we want to do that's hand thinning, it's small amount of acres, and it has close proximity to get wood off of there. And so we brought together a bunch of different partners: Ancestral Lands, Conservation Legacy, Arizona Conservation Corps, Arizona Conservation Experience, National Forest Foundation. It goes on and on. But we put together basically a budget and a plan for the next 5 years. We asked for $10 million, about a little over $1 million each year here in the Flag District, to pay for crews, youth crews and native crews to come in and do these projects. So it's a really big success story. It was like one of the first bill grants that was awarded. So yeah, it's a pretty big success. The award thing just came out last week. There was also another grant where it's called the Firewood Bank Funding, and they're going to be giving about $500,000 a year away nationally to different tribal nations throughout the country to start building wood banks and to get better at putting this stuff together. So a lot of these things are very immersed in policy over the past several years, and it's been very frustrating, but we're really truly starting to break out. And if COVID had any positivity to it, it was this. The COVID Relief Act really helped us be able to break these policies and realize that we need to be delivering wood to the people that need it. This is the ancestral lands of these people, and we really need to help them out. So it's been really cool. Yes. With that, any questions?
So I'm wondering if there's a database or anywhere where people can see the way that the funding is used on various projects in the future.
For the bill, or well, yes, we're currently trying to develop a website and like a time or those live maps, you know, that shows all that progress, show where it's going. I mean, one of the things about the bill funding is the amount we have to report every quarter on where the money's going, acres treated, all that stuff. So yeah. But yeah, if you want Wood for Life, is it woodforlife.nff.org? But that's the website's supposed to be coming on. It's pretty cool. Center in the back.
The Hopi for showed how is that funded?
That I don't know. The ALCC, Ancestral Lands.
They're funded through BIA, and then also they have their own grants, and then NFF helps the funding as well.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Question about the refund. Is that solely for St. Carlos Apache tribe, or is it with White Mountain? And is there a ending for the refund?
So it's the 4 Western Apache tribes, so Yavapai Apache, Ponto, San Carlos, and White Mountain are all involved in this process. So we have elders from all 4 of those areas that are involved with it. And the initial impetus was, working on Forest Service lands. There is a website now, I believe. So the full name of the organization is the Emery Oak Tribal Restoration Initiative. And I can, when I get back to my office, I can send an email to John and maybe he can send it out to you guys for that. So you can get that website for sure. But yeah, it's a really cool project and they meet like every quarter and it's certainly open, I think, to any tribal members that would like to come.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Did you?
I have one more.
Yeah.
One more question.
You're good.
I'm wondering if you could expand on the cultural significance of Douglas fir branches, because I've heard of that before today.
Yep, Andy can do that for you.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't want to speak for the Hopi. If there's any Hopi here that would like to answer that question,
What's the question?
okay, can you stand up, please?
It was the cultural significance of Douglas fir branches.
Oh, it's used, in some of the ceremonies, the dress. So, the men will go and do pilgrimages and gather it.
Yeah, so what the cultural preservation officer told me is that, the Hopi tribe is growing, the population is growing, and they've had really good engagement with the youth. And as the youth are coming in and they're participating in the ceremonies, the demand for Douglas fir boughs is increasing. And so this is why he wanted to really make sure that they had long-term supply. All right, any other questions? Yes, sir.
What is the predominant species that you guys do for firewood? And just from the photos, it looks like a lot of green wood. Do you guys have a drying process?
So mostly it's ponderosa pine right now. We are trying to get off into a pinyon and juniper, but usually a lot of these projects have been about 2 years out, so they've already been pretty dry. The new stuff has been green, so we don't have huge drying on that. We just kind of leave it on the forest floor and wait a few seasons to grab it, and then a lot of people grab the green and then dry it out at their houses.
And so one of the thoughts about the wood bank funding is to, to build up that stock. And that's what a lot of these places are trying to do is start building their green wood stock now. So it's curing. And so we're not having to burn or try to burn green wood. Yeah.
Quick follow-up question. How does burning wood as opposed to coal affect like air quality and particulates?
So I think from what I know, it's more dangerous internally to the local house for burning coal. But it's very similar to burning green wood, right? When we're burning that dry ponderosa, it's not as bad. But I think that's a lot of the reasons why people prefer juniper, because it's also not as bad. That's just from what I've heard, though. I don't have any.
I can piggyback off that. The intertribal environmental professionals here at NAU, Mansell Nelson, who's I guess he's the outreach person now. He did a lot of stuff on about the indoor air quality. And if you go to their website, they have articles about the air quality that you're asking about for tribal nations and how the stoves that affect those families and how to transition them to coming off of coal, but as well as ventilation practices when you're burning the wood, or how to get funding to get better stoves and how to redo the piping in their homes and everything else. So it's on their website it's under, I guess when you go to the website, it's under air quality. You just have to search with the top navigation, but they're the organizations that work with the tribes on that for indoor and outdoor quality. And the big thing that I remember Mansell saying, he's been pushing a lot on the purple air sensors, and that's what I use in my class for my students, is the purple air sensors that they can go, it's open source, but once you get it online, it's a mechanism for the community to see what their air quality is. Now, when you go to indoor air quality, that's where, since COVID happened, a lot of it is these like Honeywell and other manufacturers are trying to sell their, their filters. So it's been a way of explaining what indoor air quality is and effectively in tribal communities about that indoor air quality and how to effectively vent it. So they're the organization that's been around different tribes across the United States has been doing that and promoting about air quality. And I used to work with, I work with them as an outside entity because they were coming to San Carlos and working with different TCUs, or at least trying to establish that awareness about air quality.
Yeah, and we have redfeather.org here, that's specifically what they do, is work locally with Navajo and Hopi folks and different pueblos out east that deal specifically in that.
Are you incorporating Emery Oak and Douglasford and other reforestation strategy?
I'm sorry, what were you getting at? Are we using them for reforestation?
Are you incorporating Douglasford and Emery Oak as part of the reforestation strategy that you guys think about as part of the plan?
So,
Or what are the plans of this incorporate focus as part of that reforestation strategy?
yeah, okay, so for example, on Mount Eldon, we had the fire that happened 40 years ago. The first planting failed. On the steep slopes, I planted a mix of species. So I planted ponderosa pine, Douglas fir, white fir, limber pine. We had an area on the very top of the mountain, all along, there's a road system up there. So along the roads where we planted only Douglas fir, just so that it was readily available for those folks that might come back 20, 30 years from now in their vehicle, and they can just collect from the trees that are right next to the road. Normally, I would never plant just Douglas fir in one area. Usually you want to plant a mixture of species, but this is kind of a unique project. Now, as for the Emery Oak, what we're finding is that the young Emery Oak are not regenerating. So we're going to assist it by doing a lot of direct seeding and try to get that younger cohort to come in. And we're not trying to do it at the exclusion of all the other species. So one of the things the elders said, they wanted to make sure that we kept ponderosa pine within the groves and certain other species that are important to animals or that they collect food from. So trying to make a little bit of a balance, but that Douglas fir planting, I think, is just kind of a unique one-off planting that we did where we only planted one species.
All right, well, sorry to cut us off here, but we do need to transition and switch gears. So with that, I appreciate all the questions and thank you for providing some of those comments and additional feedback. I do have one more question for Andy. You got to explain your glasses. Those look really cool. Is that some kind of wood glass frames?
Yes, Dave. Wood glass.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I was on Instagram and these glasses came up on one of my ads. And what's funny is that they were advertising to like hipsters, but since they were made out of wood and I'm a forester, I thought, oh, I got to buy a pair of these. So I did.
All right, well, we're all going to have to come back with our wood glasses. Yeah, that's great. Thank you again, Andy, Jake, and Elise. This is great. Before we kind of wrap up, and I'm going to leave these folks up here on the stage to talk about the field trip and give you a little bit of a briefing, and Jonathan will come up here and share some details. But before we do that, Laura, if we do have virtual participants still there and we want to say goodbye to them, we can bring them up on the screen one more time. Oh, no, okay, I guess not. That's fine. I think we're into the break time anyway, so no worries. Goodbye, virtual participants, if you're still there. The other thing, let's see. So Jonathan's going to talk a little bit about vehicles and where to meet, and I'll pass it actually right back to Jake to give you more details about the field trip here in a second.
Cool, thank you. So for the sake of time, I won't explain too much because we'll have plenty of time to talk out there, but we're basically going up to a portion of FWPP, kind of up on this side here. And we're going to look at 4 different, well, there's going to be a lot to see. There's been a lot that's going on here. We had 2 major fires in the area this year. We had a lot of flooding. We've had a ton of treatment. A lot of this work's been done. And right now we've got active timber stand improvement operations going on. So you'll see some rubber tire skidders going on, some hand falling